What do we call shapes that look like this? If you said triangles, you're right. But what makes these shapes triangles? Well, these are triangles because they all have 3 sides. But do you know that a triangle actually has 2 names? Every single triangle has a first name and a last name. Now, I know what you're thinking. Triangles are not walking around like this. Hello, my name is Barnaby Higglesworth. No, they don't have that kind of first name and last name, silly. The first name of a triangle comes from the type of angles it has. And the last name of a triangle comes from the type of sides it has. Today, we will just be focusing on the first names of our triangles. We'll get to the last names tomorrow. The first thing we want to do when we name any triangle is to figure out what kind of interior angles it has. That means what kind of angles the triangle has on the inside. So if we look at these 3 angles, and we're going to check in with each one of them and decide if it's acute, right, or obtuse. Remember, acute means less than 90 degrees, right means exactly 90 degrees, and obtuse means more than 90 degrees. Well, this angle looks definitely like it's acute. And this angle also looks like it's acute, so I'm just gonna write an A so I can remember that. It's hard to tell since this angle is at the top of the triangle, and a trick I like to use is to rotate my paper so I can get a better look at just this angle. And sometimes I even cover up the rest of the triangle to get a better look at just this angle. And I can see that this angle is also less than 90 degrees. So I'm gonna put an A at the top of my triangle for acute. Now, when a triangle has 3 acute angles, its first name is, you guessed it, acute. This is called an acute triangle. Very creative, I know. All right, let's look at our next triangle. We're gonna start by looking at these 3 angles. Now, if we wanna check and see if an angle is a right angle, a trick we can use is called the note card trick. The corners of any note card are exactly 90 degrees, and if I wanna make sure that an angle is actually a right angle, I can use the corner of my note card just to double check. And I can see that yes, this absolutely is a right angle. I'm gonna put my box there, and I can also put an R just to remember. This angle right here looks very, very small, very closed. So we're gonna put an A right there to say that it's acute. And then I hope you can tell up here that this is also acute, but if you're not positive, remember, you can always rotate your paper or cover up the rest of the triangle just to look carefully, and you will see that it's also an acute angle. A triangle with exactly 1 right angle is called a right triangle. That right angle is what makes this triangle special. All right, we have one more type of triangle that I want to introduce you to. What kind of angle is an angle that is greater than 90 degrees? It's more open-mouthed than a right angle. This angle right here is called an obtuse angle. So I'm going to put an O right there just to make sure we know that it's obtuse. This angle is pretty closed up. It's another acute angle. Same with my angle on top. That is an acute angle as well. When a triangle has exactly 1 obtuse angle, it's called a, you guessed it, obtuse triangle. I know these names are not very creative, but they are easy to remember. So let's practice this on 3 random triangles. We have 3 triangles and we don't know their names. We want to figure it out. The first thing we're going to do is just go through and label each angle. So let's start with this angle up here at the top. This looks pretty wide open mouthed, but if you're not sure, rotating your paper is always a good trick just to make sure and see, yep, that is an obtuse angle. My other 2 angles are very closed, very small. They are both acute angles. Remember, 1 obtuse angle is what makes this special, so we know that this is an obtuse triangle. All right, how about my next one? Now I definitely can look here and see that this is an acute angle, but these other 2 are kind of tricky, so I'm going to use a few of my tricks. Let's rotate here and see if either of these angles are right angles. Now remember, the corner of my note card is exactly 90 degrees. If either of these are right angles, this should fit. Okay, well that one doesn't fit, and that one doesn't fit either, which means these are both actually They're not as small as the other angle, but they are both acute angles. And what do we have when all three angles are acute? We have an acute triangle. Okay, last but not least, I have one more triangle here. Let's start with this angle right up here at the top. Remember, if it's a right angle, the corner of my note card should fit right into the corner. Is it a perfect match? It absolutely is. If we know this is a right angle, we know that that special angle is what's going to name the triangle, which means that these other two angles are acute angles. And the name of this triangle is a right triangle. There you go. Want the worksheet I'm using in this video? Click on the link below and get the full packet, including partner practice, 3 pages of independent practice, a challenge page for your early finishers, and an exit quiz. Thank you for watching and happy teaching.